Welcome, guys. Dobry вечер, good evening. That's good evening in Russian. I'm very glad to host you in my kitchen. I am living now in Miami, Florida with my husband, who is helping me by holding the phone, and my children, who are securely shipped to their bedroom to watch TV, and the puppy, who is also caged. And tonight we're going to be cooking one of my go-to recipes, something that I can whip in the middle of the night with my eyes closed, something that's very easy for me. And this is the recipe of Russian pancakes, crepes, whatever you want to call them. We call them blintzes, obviously. And this is the recipe that I learned from my grandma. Her name was Rebecca, and her birthday would be on Saturday. So when I spoke to Julie and I thought of teaching something, I thought that this will be a really nice way to honor her memory, because, you know, families continue in children and grandchildren, but also in family stories and in family traditions. So this is my way of thinking about my grandma Rebecca and her recipe. And as I'm going to be cooking, I'll tell you probably a little bit more about the significance of this dish for Russian cuisine, about stuff that has to do with my family, because my favorite part about tradition kitchens is that you also get to share stories that surround the cooking, because that's the really fun part about cooking and eating together as community and as a family. All right, so without further ado, I'm gonna start cooking, and probably as I'm frying them, actually, I'll tell you some of the stuff, all right? So you got the recipe, but for that recipe, you essentially need 3 eggs, which we got here, and milk, 2 cups. I mean, I have one and I'll pour another. We need some sugar, we need some flour, salt, oil to fry, but that's it. So it's very simple. Also, I get to remember, you know, really well, that's 3 eggs, 3 spoons of sugar, half a liter of milk or 2 cups, and so on and so forth. So, and obviously, you know, if you like, it's a little bit adjustable recipe. So if you like it sweeter, add more sugar. If you don't like it as sweet, you can take out, let's say, one spoon of sugar. I've never actually made them with plant-based milk. I hear you can, so once again, you can try. And I use the regular bleached white flour here. But once again, it's up to you. You can try and experiment. But this is really my go-to, and I promise you, the way I make it, at least, it always works out. No matter where I am, what country, what kitchen, what stove, it always works. So it's very simple. There isn't really much to teach you about, but first you break all 3 eggs into the bowl. And you can do it, you can whisk everything by hand. My grandma never used, she didn't have a mixer, I don't think. So she always used, you know, just whisked everything by hand. But I prefer the mixer because it makes things much faster. So you'll break 3 eggs into the bowl, just like so. And after that, you would add a pinch of salt. It's usually bringing up the flavors. And 3 tablespoons of sugar. At least I add 3 tablespoons of sugar. That's what we're gonna do. One, 2, 3. All right. Then you just mix them together. Nothing super fancy. You don't need to, you know, make them into peaks or whatever.
It was the one of these Zoom virtual. Could you put the phone back? I need to close.
All right, so as soon as they're sort of mixed up, you know, really just to your liking, and like I said, you can do it by hand as well. Once they're all mixed up, then the fun part begins. And I usually do it by hand, or like, you know, in my head. So I don't know exactly the proportion of flour. That's what I said. It's about 2 cups, but we'll see, more or less. I'll tell you the consistency which I'm looking for at the end. That's how I make it. So what I do first is I dump, you know, so we have 2 cups of milk, which means 4 half cups, right? So we'd go with half a cup of milk at a time, something like this, more or less. A little bit more. Yep. But also no exact measure, and it's not going to affect anything. It's just convenient for me to do it this way. I'll mix it quickly. All right. Right, so this is all mixed up, and then I will add 2-3 tablespoons of flour. 2-3 tablespoons of flour, right? And also sort of measured by the eye. They're usually a little bit full, but something like this. Let's start with 3 maybe, like this. And then I mix it all together, right? So half a cup, 2-3 spoons of flour. Once everything is more or less mixed up, I mean, you don't even need to worry that much about the clumps, as long as, you know, you mixed up your thing and it's pretty liquidy, because we also have eggs, so it has a lot of liquid in it. Then I go with the next half a cup, right, like this. And then another 2-3 spoons of flour. One. And of course, it's probably wise to air it and to use the sifter, but it's my morning recipe. Igor, well, my husband will tell you, so it's got to be whipped up pretty quickly, because then we need to fry it. So I don't really do fancy, just like, you know, fast morning thing. Mix. All right. 1 cup down, 1 to go. So I'm gonna pour my second cup of milk, and I'm using whole regular milk. I don't think it matters. I'm pretty sure you can use fat-free milk or whatever. And like I said, you can also probably use plant-based, although I've never done that. All right. And it's like gets you about 12-13 blintzes, depending on your skillet, on your frying pan, but it's not little. It's a good measure of, you know. All right, and we're up for our last batch, our last part, right? So we're gonna add last half a cup and last spoon, 3 spoons, 1, 2. Since it's pretty easy, you know, if you're cooking with children, this is also a good recipe to cook with them, because there is not much to it. All right, so this was the last part. And so here's the consistency. If you can see from the mixer, it's really, really, really liquidy. And that's what we're looking for. So if I'm thinking it's not liquidy enough, I will just add a little bit more milk, or a little bit water even will work, you know, but you're really looking for the batter to be like water, like really, really, really liquidy. Because the key, you know, you measure different dishes, their success differently. With blintzes, with crabs, it should be thin. So if the batter is really thin, it's really also liquid and thin, then it's easy to distribute it on the frying pan. So that's the secret, I guess. So when you're in doubt, you can always make it more liquidy. Okay.
Olga, quick
Yeah.
question for you.
Yeah.
Heath is asking us, so it's a half a cup of milk, then 3 tablespoons of flour, then you do that for 4 times. Is that right?
So the recipe, this recipe calls for 500 milliliters or 2 cups of milk, right? So I divide it into half cups, which gives us 4 half cups, and I go half cup, 3 spoons. Half cup, 3 spoons, and so on till I run out of milk, which is 4 times, right? 4 times you add the flour, so it's 12, right? 12 tablespoons of flour, which is about 2 cups, I think. That's what I measured, and also 2 cups of milk. Yeah, right. That's it. Any more questions meanwhile, or everything else is more or less clear?
Yeah, how's everybody doing? If you want, you can show us your like blended ingredients at the camera and we can spotlight you. Heath, we're gonna take a look at Heath for a second.
Cool.
That's good. Mira, I'll let you take over.
Yeah, it looks like Allison's cooking along. And Melissa. Yeah, everyone's batter looks delicious.
Amazing.
So I'll turn it back over to Olga.
So what else you can do? You know, many people would add a little bit of vanilla or some cinnamon to their batter. For me, because my grandma never did, I'm sort of very conservative about those things. I don't, but it's your batter. Feel free to experiment. It's up to you. Once you mix everything together, the gluten inside the flour needs to rest a little to release whatever something that the batter thickens a tiny bit. So I think, you know, we should give it a few minutes for it to just relax and chill with us this evening. And then we're going to continue cooking. So I can tell you that this is really one of the main dishes that we have in Russian cuisine. I come from a Jewish family in Russia, but it's not a Jewish recipe, it's really a Russian one. And it's something that everybody, I think, eats and everybody cooks. We even have a special holiday. It's called like the holiday of butter or the holiday of oil. And it's the last day or the last weekend of winter or something. It's like at the very, very end of the winter in February. In Russia, winter ends in February. So at the very end of winter, you have a special holiday in which you're supposed to make blintzes and eat them, and it's a known tradition. Another thing that has to do with blintzes is also the morning food. So when somebody passes away and you have the morning ceremony and this sort of remembrance dinner for a person, it's also traditional to serve blintzes because it's the circle of life and looks like a sun. And I think it's really those ancient pre-Christian traditions in Russia. So it's sort of from birth to death, we were honoring people and enjoying stuff with blintzes. And you can also have different fillings, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but while we're waiting for the batter to thicken a bit, I'll tell you that, you know, my favorite is sour cream. That's my go-to. If you're fancy and you have some caviar, red or black caviar, you can have it with caviar. Some people have it that way. You can have it sweet with jams, with honey, with condensed milk. I like also start everything with condensed milk, so you can also do that. And then I won't be doing it, but I'll tell you about it. You can also stuff them. So you can, you know, put a little bit of the filling inside, fold it as an envelope, and then eat it that way, or put them in the refrigerator, or even freeze them. You can put cottage cheese or farmer's cheese inside. You can put apples inside. My mom would make a batch with like ground beef and onions, and also put it so there will be essentially like a dinner dish, you know. Usually it's a breakfast dish, obviously, but if it's filled with stuff, especially if it's not sweet, It could also be the dinner dish. So there's a variety of uses for this food. All right, let's check them out. I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, they've thickened a tiny bit, not much. It's still pretty liquidy the way I like it. And the last thing that we're gonna add to the batter, and I'll explain why, we're gonna add a little bit of oil to it. So I have regular vegetable canola oil. I'm gonna add just a glob, I don't know, a little bit. I don't really measure it. I would say probably 1/4 cup, but just a little bit, like this. And do the final mix. All right. I think we're good to go with cooking actually then. And so this is a really fast part. This takes you 5 minutes or something to whip it up. And now we're gonna move to the stove, right? And we're gonna fry them. My grandma would cook them on cast iron skillet frying pan. I'm too lazy, so I have a special non-stick. And actually this is a special crab or, you know, Blintzes skillet that my mom brought from Russia. I saw them here as well in States, so I'm pretty sure I can get them. They have, you see that they have really thin sides, so it's easy to flip and get them away. I promised myself I'm not gonna be flipping them in the air because of course today it's not gonna work, so I'm not gonna give it a try. But if you're adventurous, you can also try flipping them in the air. All right, so it's pretty thick. So the reason of ours adding oil is that, especially if you have a non-stick pan, but even the regular one, if you have oil inside, it's probably not gonna stick, right? So it's gonna prevent it from sticking to the frying pan, but, and it also makes it tastier, I think. But the way I do it, I have different methodologies. I could use, sometimes I use pan to butter a little bit the frying pan to oil it, or nothing at all, or I would put a little bit of oil in a little bowl and I will brush it with a brush. So we're gonna try all three just for the fun of it, see what's the difference. But for the first one, I'm gonna just put a little bit of oil here and I'm going to start frying it. And I like for the beginning at least, I like the hottest setting on my stove. And then when it really heats up, oil might reduce it. We'll see how quickly it's gonna brown and we're gonna, you know, take it from there. But essentially you need to warm up your frying pan. That's the step to do it, right? And I really like the bigger ladle because it allows me to figure out and to control the amount of batter I'm putting on the frying pan. So that's the story with the ladle. You can also try a smaller one, or sometimes it's convenient to use the ice cream scoop, a large ice cream or cookie scoop, but I like a bigger ladle, but feel free to use whatever you want. So we'll warm it up a little bit. I'll prepare a plate to put them out on. And then, I mean, you also need something, a spatula or something to flip them. Obviously, they don't recommend using metal on the non-stick, but we'll use it, just don't tell anybody, all right? All right. For the first one, we're gonna add a little bit of oil, like this. I'll make it, I have 10, I'll make it 9 probably. So it's not that hot, but still should be pretty hot. Looks pretty hot. And we'll stir it because the heavier particles in the batter are gonna go to the bottom. So before you put it, you will stir it. Make sure that it's even. We'll make sure that the frying pan is hot. And then, so what I like to do, I like to take almost full ladle of the batter, right? And then I'm gonna put it towards the middle of the frying pan. You know what? I think it's not hot yet, so we're gonna wait a little bit longer. That's a good test as well. You see that it's not sizzling. So we're gonna wait a tiny bit till it picks up, and then I'm gonna put it on. And my grandma, she would just whip them anytime we needed a quick lunch or anything, any type of meal, and we didn't have the side or anything, they were always Blintzes. So this is our tiny little baby blin, which I think is coming along nicely. So I'm gonna flip it. Yeah.
Hey Olga, quick question.
Yeah.
Are Blintzes and blini identical? Are they the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think in Russian we call them bliny, but Americans cannot pronounce y, so they became blini. The singular is blin, there is one blin, and then the plural is bliny or blinis or blintzes. I think it's all the same. And I think blintzes could be Polish actually, I'm not sure, but it could be, the sound could come from somewhere else. Yeah, but it's the same thing, it's those thin. And speaking of which, this is my go-to recipe, but there's a whole bunch of different ones. There is a really famous one with yeast, so they like have holes everywhere, and they're very different flavor.
Pores.
You need pores, you need them a little bit more time to rise, and there are different variations of them. This is just one of those. And originally, when all the cooking was happening inside the oven, you would actually bake them in the oven. So they were baked and not fried, and it's different, you know, methodologies, but we're using the oven, the top of the stove one. All right, so I think our skillet is nice and hot.
And Olga, someone's asking, are the ones with yeast also called Blintzes, or is there a different?
Yeah, they're called yeast Blintzes. And if you guys want the recipe, I'll send the Tradition Kitchens the recipe, and you can also try those. They're the same, but just you need a little bit time for the yeast to work. I just cooked them some time ago. All right, so what we're doing, we're putting a little bit of that batter, and you hear that it's sizzling, and then you try to cover the whole frying pan with it nicely, right? And you swirl it and swirl it and swirl it, and ta-da. All right, and then how you know that your stuff is ready, so you will see that it's gonna change color. So as soon as it, you know, you see that this is really light color, and then it becomes more yellow and sort of dries up on top, which means all the liquid inside the blin has evaporated, then that's your signal that you can turn it, all right? Igor doesn't like them. He likes when they're fried a little bit, so I usually wait a little bit longer, right? And then I will turn them. But this is essentially, as soon as all of this has dried up, you can, and you will see sometimes, you know, it's starting to brown up on the edges. That's another good sign for you to turn, but you can sort of experiment with that. But for me, it looks ready. So the way I would turn them, they're hot, but I will do this.
How much oil should you add to the batter?
How much what?
Oil should you add to the batter?
About quarter cup. And it's really like, you see, this is really 1 minute, even less than a minute on one side, and then you flip it. And I see that it's browning too quickly, so I changed the setting for 8 because I think it's too fast and it's gonna burn. And I smell it too, so. All right, but some people, Igor said, like it, my husband. So if you're cooking along, have you guys turned yours?
If you're cooking along and you want to show it on your camera, we can spotlight you.
All right, and I'm just I think this one is ready, mine is ready. So, and now it's moving easily on the frying pan. So I'm just gonna slide it on the plate. Ta-da! It's ready, okay? I mean, in a nutshell, that's it. So next one we're gonna try it without anything on the frying pan, and we'll see how that's gonna go. So I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna take a little bit of batter, and I'm gonna put it and just swirl it. And see, I have almost half of the ladle left because I want it to be really, really, really thin. And we see, might not work. We'll experiment. We'll see how it's gonna work. We have a saying in Russian, there is a proverb in Russian that the first blin is always a ball, meaning that the first something, when you start doing something, it never works out the very first time, right? And every time I cook it, I think about it. And I like to taste it, and I want to show you that if you cook with this recipe, the first blin actually turns out pretty nicely, all right? So it's not, very good. Do you want to try? I like to taste it to see that everything, there's enough of everything. It has browned enough. It's pretty hot. And see, even though we didn't add anything to it, it's still gonna cook, but it's a little bit different. I like it when it's a little bit more oily. All right, and this one's a little bit more crispy, but still came out fine. And it's literally a couple of seconds on the other side. It's pretty quick. So you give it a few seconds. And once you get the gist of it, you can also use 2 frying pans at the same time. And now let's try pan to see how that's gonna work. Okay, so we can also butter it this way. Okay, it darkens too quickly, so I don't like that. No. Our verdict for the pan, it's a no-go. Don't use it, guys. It's still gonna be all right, but it browns too quickly, it burns too quickly, and then it's gonna affect the blend. And there might be drips because it's liquidy. All right. So. All right. And you can check on them. So once you think that they're like sort of coming along and you're not sure whether they're ready or not, you can lift an edge and see how they're doing. And then you can also flip it. Looks pretty, doesn't look bad. Looks different. They all look different. Look, this one without, this one with pan, and the first one with the regular oil, they all look a little bit different, which is interesting.
It looks really good.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
How's everyone who's cooking along doing?
I don't like my butter method most.
We're getting some thumbs ups.
I like my oil method the most, so I think I'm going to be oiling the thing. The other thing to tell you guys is that I think the batter, it's really actually, it's fine if you make it and it's too much. You can refrigerate it, I think, overnight or for the next day for breakfast to make them fresh. I think it should be fine. All right. And I really like to swirl it as much as I can so it's as thin as I can go with. Okay. And I'll show you one more thing that I do when I'm trying to go really thin with them. So you see with all the steam, it's the air, the liquid coming out. All right, we're getting there. Drying out. And if it's, yep, it's perfect. We should be able to flip it. Ta-da. Right, so this is what? This is our 4th one. Yeah, it's about, this is the size, I don't know how big this skillet is, but it makes about 12, 13, 14 blintzes at a time with this batch. All right, and we're gonna dump it. Another thing that you guys can do is that you can take some butter, and once you put a hot one on top of the pile, you can also butter it, and then they're going to be really soft and really buttery, and they're going to have this nice creamy flavor to them. I usually just too much maintenance for me, too high maintenance, too much hassle, but that's another way to do it. You can also do that for a nice flavor while you're cooking. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. You do as little as you can, and then you add a little bit more as you go, and that's going to go for the thinnest. And then if there are holes, first of all, you can leave them. They're pretty cool too. Or you can fill them, like you can dip a little bit and they're gonna get filled. Okay, but this is, I think, the thinnest out of the whole batch. And because they're so thin, it literally takes no time for them to fry, to cook. And I would say out of the whole process, the actual frying is the longest part. Otherwise, it's pretty easy. Frying is easy as well, actually. And they're sturdy enough, so as you can see, you know, this is pretty sharp, but I haven't ripped a single one. I mean, let's hope this one doesn't rip after I brag about it, but they're pretty, yep. Oh, I overdid it. It's really brown. It's really cooked. I made it like 7, a little bit like medium high. That's what I did now because it's frying. Maybe I'm talking too much, but it's frying to quite dark color. But you like it this way, right? Yeah. All right. All right. So I think I'm going to do the last one now. I don't need to do the whole batch. And I can also take some questions, and then we can talk about what you can eat it with. As I started, and I'll taste one with sour cream because I think that's the best way to go. All right, so you mix it because once again, as you cook, the batter is gonna not separate, but the heavier parts are gonna be in the bottom, and you don't want this to happen. And if it thickens up too much, you can always also add a little bit of milk if it feels like it's thick now. All right. All right. So while this one is cooking, my favorite blintz story that's connected to my grandma Rebecca, whose recipe it is, when I was a teenager, I went for a walk with my classmates, with my friends, and then my grandparents lived in the other part of my hometown, and it was too late for us to get home. So we spent the night with them. See, it literally took 20 seconds. And in the morning, we all slept like on the floor and everywhere, a big group of my friends. I was maybe 16, 15. And then all of us had breakfast, and my grandma didn't say a word. She didn't scold, but we just, sort of went into her house last thing, and it was before the cell phones. And in the morning, I remember that she made a big batch of blintzes for all of us. So that's my memory. That's my fondest memory of her making blintzes. I think that's it. I think, I won't be making any more. That's a good, nice batch to start with, right? We have some more probably. I'm going to make the rest tomorrow morning. I'm going to refrigerate this. It should be fine. So they're pretty thin. You can see through them. They're pretty thin. They're soft. The edges are a little crispy, like this, right? And they're little also pores. They're not yeast, right? But they're still pretty nice. They look pretty, if you ask me. Like I said, I prefer them with sour cream, so I would just take a little bit of sour cream. You can do yogurt. Honey is another traditional thing to eat the blintzes with, the sweet thing.
Nutella.
Yes, you can do Nutella, chocolate, whatever. I mean, essentially it's whatever.
Ham and cheese.
Ham and cheese is another one. So the funny thing about it is that, we have special blin restaurants in Russia. And that's one of the traditional fast food restaurants, and that's one of the traditional things they would add. There's also, you can make like a sauce with mushrooms, mushroom sauce, sort of like for pasta, and also add it to the blintzes. So I do it this way. Okay, now there are different ways to do it. So as I told you before, if you're doing a filling, and you can do cherries, farmer's cheese, whatever you want, you would fold it. You would fold one side, and then another, you will envelope it, right? And that's how you will put them, right? And that's how you would keep them. If I like to make mine into triangles, you can also roll them. So if you have, let's say, apples, usually people roll them. And then I like to just make them into little pie chart, little, slice of the pie chart, like this.
Piece of slice.
Piece of slice, and then I'll eat it. Very good.
It looks delicious.
I would have loved to invite you guys. It's very good. All right. While we're at it, if you guys have any questions, shoot. Now is the time. I'll be happy to answer.
Someone wants to see the folding again.
All right. The folding.
And if you have a question, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself as well.
All right. So let me put it here. So different strategies for folding. Obviously, if you have pieces of food with small pieces, you don't want it to fall out, especially if you want to. Sometimes after you fold it, you will also fry it on both sides to make it to crispen it up a little bit, right? So how I would fold it, I would put a little bit filling inside.
Minced meat, for example.
For example, you would make minced meat as if you would start making bolognese, right? You will fry some meat with onions, maybe carrots, whatever you like, salt, pepper, and that's a very traditional filling for blintzes. You'll put a few spoons here, then you will fold, it's a circle, right? So you will fold one side like this, okay? Then you will fold another side on top, like this. and then you will close the sides off, right? This way, everything is, I mean, it's not really tucked in, but it's all, you know, they're not gonna fall apart. So that's one way. When my mom makes the filling with apples, like you will make as if you're making an apple pie, caramelized apple with the syrup and sugar and what have you. You'll put a little bit in the middle, and then you roll it into a roll. Also, if you're serving it for a party, you can use like the panini method almost. You can do the rolls and you can slice them in the middle so they're short and easier to eat, right? And as for me, my method of folding the blintzes, it's funny to be discussing it all together, but I usually just fold it in half, then another half, third, and then I eat it. So they don't last long in my house. We don't usually refrigerate them, we just eat them. So that's the folding method. Any
Does
other
anyone
questions?
else have any questions? Those blintzes look delicious that everyone's eating. And I just want to take a moment to thank Olga so much for coming and teaching us and sharing her recipe and answering all of our questions. So we really appreciate Olga taking time out of her day to be with us. And thank you all for coming.
You know what? I want to see before I go, because I was on the other side of the camera. If you guys can show your blintzes, I sort of want to see what came out.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. That looks good, you guys. You did a good job. I'm really proud of you.
Yeah, they all look delicious.
They look
And
great.
definitely, you can email us your pictures, or if you're on social media, you can tag us, Tradition Kitchens, or Olga is Kitchen Meises. Am I saying that right?
Right. So it's Kitchen Meises, MEISES, and I share my family recipes and family stories there. You're welcome to join.
Yeah, and then make sure you stay up to date with Tradition Kitchens. Our Instagram is @Tradition Kitchens. Our Facebook is Tradition Kitchens, so you can get all the info there. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. We had a great time.
Thank you, guys. Bon appetit. Приятного аппетита. Enjoy the blintzes.
Thank you. And thank you to Igor, our cameraman. I guess Olga left. I wanted to see what was going on, but oh well. Great job, Mira. And Emmy, and Emmy's sister. Remind me of your name.
Alana.
Alana. I'm removing iPad. Bye, iPad.
Yeah, I think that went really well.
Yeah, it did. We were gonna cook along, but I got nervous at the last second and I decided I should try it on my own time after I watched one.
Yeah, no, it's hard to learn and cook. We usually have half and half, but I thought it was really good.
Yeah, no, there was a decent amount cooking along. I was impressed with that.
Yeah, and I think we had a lot of our traditional population of over the age of 50, but we definitely had more younger faces. So I think that is
yeah,
good.
and someone from Australia. That's pretty cool.
That is so cool. I'll text you the selfies. And let me.
Yeah, and I'll post it tomorrow, and then I'll text